There's a process that turns ordinary loose sand into solid rock using nothing but a mild electrical current. No heat, no pressure, no cement, no factory, no kiln, no billion-dollar supply chain. Just electricity. Weaker than what flows out of 2 standard AA batteries. You push 2 metal rods into wet sand, run less than 3 volts between them, and within minutes the grains fuse together into a material as hard and immovable as natural stone. The minerals doing the binding are already dissolved in the surrounding water. They have been sitting there for millions of years, waiting for someone to flip a switch. In August 2024, researchers at Northwestern University published the peer-reviewed proof of this in a journal called Communications, Earth, and Environment. They demonstrated that a mild electrical current applied to seawater-soaked sand triggers a chemical reaction that converts dissolved minerals into solid calcium carbonate and magnesium hydroxide, the very same compounds that clams, mussels, and oysters use to construct their shells. Except instead of metabolic energy, the researchers used electricity, and instead of growing a shell over months, they cemented sand into stone in a matter of hours. The cost of this process came in at $3 to $6 per cubic meter of solidified ground. The conventional method of injecting cement binders into unstable sand costs up to $70 for the same volume. That is not a marginal improvement. That is a complete obliteration of the cost equation. And yet, if you have never heard of this, that silence is not an accident. It has a perfectly logical explanation, and it begins not in a university lab, but deep inside the ocean 500 million years ago. Part 1. Nature's blueprint. Long before any human scientist ran electricity through sand, nature had already perfected the process. For hundreds of millions of years, marine organisms have been pulling dissolved calcium and carbonate ions directly out of seawater and assembling them into solid structures. Coral reefs, mollusk shells, the limestone cliffs of Dover, all of it built by living creatures converting liquid minerals into rock using nothing more than biological energy. A single oyster takes dissolved calcium carbonate from ocean water and deposits it, layer by microscopic layer, into a shell harder than most commercial ceramics. No furnace, no fossil fuel. Just electrochemistry, powered by the organism's own metabolism. This is not metaphor. This is literal chemistry. The same electrochemical reactions that occur inside an oyster's soft tissue can be replicated using a copper electrode and a small electric charge. The mechanisms are functionally identical. What the oyster does biologically, a circuit can do electrically. For the entirety of human civilization, we ignored this. We chose instead to blast limestone out of the earth, heat it to the temperature of volcanic lava, and reassemble it chemically into a gray powder we call cement. We built an entire industrial civilization on that approach. And the machine it created is now so large, so deeply embedded in the global economy, that any challenge to it is absorbed and neutralized before it reaches the public. But the biology never stopped working. And eventually, a handful of scientists decided to pay attention. Part 2. The first pioneer, Wolf Hilberts. The first human to deliberately replicate this biological trick in a laboratory was a German-born architect named Wolf Hilberts. In 1976, working at the University of Texas, Hilberts was studying coral formation when he made a discovery that should have rewritten construction science. He placed 2 metal electrodes in seawater and ran a small direct current between them. Within hours, a hard, dense layer of calcium carbonate began accumulating on the cathode. The material was structurally sound and chemically identical to natural limestone. Hilberts called the process mineral accretion. It later became known as biorock. And he spent the next 3 decades proving what it could do. He demonstrated the technology across more than 20 countries. He filed patents. He published research. He showed that structures grown through mineral accretion actually strengthen over time and exhibit a remarkable property. They are self-repairing. When a crack forms, dissolved minerals in the surrounding water continue to precipitate and fill the gap, as long as a small current keeps flowing. The material does not degrade, it heals. His work was not confined to the academic fringe. The research was exhibited at the Museum of Modern Art in New York. In 1998, he received the Theodore M. Sperry Award from the Society for Ecological Restoration, which honors genuine pioneers in the field. He collaborated with marine biologist Thomas Garreau, and together they deployed biorock structures across tropical coastlines worldwide. Coral attached to biorock frames grew up to 5 times faster than on natural substrate. The technology worked. It was proven in the field, not just in the lab. It was recognized by scientific institutions and cultural institutions alike. And then, Hilberts died in 2007, largely unknown outside of marine science circles. His patents expired without commercial adoption. His process was used only for coral reef restoration. Valuable work, but a niche application that posed no threat whatsoever to the concrete industry. Not a single construction firm ever licensed the process. Not a single building materials company ever investigated it seriously. A technology considered significant enough for the Museum of Modern Art was not considered significant enough for a single product catalog. The reasons for that will become clear shortly. But first, we need to understand what happened in 2024. Part 3. The Northwestern Study. Alessandro Rotta-Loria is a civil engineering professor at Northwestern University. He was not trying to restore coral reefs. He was trying to solve coastal erosion, a problem affecting nearly 26% of the world's beaches, all of which are projected to vanish by the end of this century under current conditions. His team took samples of common silica sand, the same sand found on any beach in the world, saturated it with seawater, inserted electrodes, and applied a current of between 2 and 4 volts, less than the output of a standard 9-volt battery. The electricity triggered electrochemical reactions in the seawater that converted dissolved ions into 3 distinct solid minerals: calcium carbonate, the primary structural material in seashells and limestone; magnesium hydroxide, found in many natural stones; and hydromagnesite, a stable carbonate mineral that forms under specific pH conditions. These minerals precipitated directly onto and between the sand grains, filling the spaces between them and bonding the particles together at a molecular level. The sand stopped being sand. It became rock, solid, stable, structurally coherent stone, formed at room temperature, with a fraction of the energy required to boil a kettle of water. Rotta-Loria described the result plainly in the published study. After treatment, the sand looks like a rock. It is still and solid instead of granular and incoherent. And then he added the detail that deserves the most attention. The minerals produced by this process are stronger than concrete. Stronger than concrete, the material that humanity pours 4.5 billion cubic meters of every single year. The material on which entire economies are built and which entire ecosystems are destroyed to produce. Replicated, surpassed, by sand, seawater, and a current too faint to feel on skin. The study was funded by the United States Army Research Office. That detail matters. The military does not fund fringe chemistry. They funded this because the strategic implications are substantial. Forward operating bases in coastal regions could build defensive barriers directly from the local beach using portable solar panels and a set of electrodes. No cement convoys, no vulnerable supply lines, just sand and seawater already present underfoot. Part 4. What cement actually is. To understand why this discovery has been received with near total institutional silence, you need to understand what cement is and what producing it actually costs. Cement begins as limestone, blasted out of open-pit quarries that permanently scar the landscape across 6 continents. That limestone is crushed, mixed with clay and other minerals, and fed into enormous rotating kilns, some the length of football fields, where it is heated to 150 degrees Celsius. That is roughly the temperature of volcanic lava. At that temperature, a chemical reaction called calcination occurs. Calcium carbonate in the limestone breaks apart into calcium oxide and carbon dioxide. The calcium oxide fuses with the surrounding minerals to form dense nodules called clinker, which are then ground into the fine gray powder sold as cement. The kilns run 24 hours a day, 7 days a week, without interruption. Shutting them down and restarting them wastes enormous amounts of fuel and damages the refractory lining inside the drum. The entire production model depends on continuous, unrelenting combustion of fossil fuel at industrial scale. Every ton of cement produced releases approximately 0.8 to 0.9 tons of carbon dioxide into the atmosphere. Roughly half comes from burning the fuel needed to reach those temperatures. The other half comes from the limestone itself. Carbon dioxide is chemically locked inside the rock and is released as a necessary byproduct of the calcination reaction. There is no version of traditional cement production that eliminates this. The CO2 release is not a design flaw, it is the design. The global cement industry produces over 4 billion tons of product per year and accounts for approximately 7 to 8% of all human-caused carbon dioxide emissions on Earth. If the cement industry were a country, it would be the 3rd largest greenhouse gas emitter in the world, behind only China and the United States. And unlike most industries, it is not getting cleaner. The carbon intensity of cement actually increased by over 9% between 2015 and 2020. In 2024, the global cement market was valued at over $400 billion. The broader concrete market, which depends on cement as its primary binding agent, was estimated at $1.82 trillion that same year. That is the economic architecture that Rotta-Loria's $6 process threatens. And that is why the silence around it is not surprising. It is predictable. Part 5. Why nothing happens. The suppression of discoveries like this one does not require a boardroom conspiracy. It does not require phone calls between executives or deliberate campaigns to bury research. It operates through something far more mundane and far more powerful: economic gravity. No cement company has a financial incentive to develop a process that eliminates the need for cement. No construction firm has a reason to advertise a method that costs $6 per cubic meter when their business model depends on charging many times that for the conventional alternative. No venture capital firm will fund a technology built around inputs that cannot be patented. And that is the core issue. You cannot patent seawater. You cannot patent dissolved minerals. You cannot patent sand. You cannot patent electrochemistry that has been understood since the 19th century. There is no proprietary molecule to protect, no exclusive distribution channel to build, no licensing fee to collect. What cannot generate monopoly profit margins does not attract investment. What does not attract investment does not get engineered into products. What does not become a product does not appear in hardware stores, or construction catalogs, or building code specifications. And what is absent from all of those channels remains, for practical purposes, invisible to the public, regardless of how significant the underlying science is. The same pattern has repeated throughout industrial history. Effective, inexpensive, and unpatentable solutions to problems that expensive industries profit from solving tend to remain in academic journals. They are cited by other researchers, they receive grants, they impress review committees, and they never reach the people who would most benefit from them. The result is measured in consequences the world continues to absorb. In 2024 alone, cement manufacturing released 1.47 billion metric tons of carbon dioxide into the atmosphere. The World Economic Forum projects that, if current production practices continue, annual emissions from cement will reach 3.8 billion tons by mid-century. That is not a projection from an advocacy organization, that is from the World Economic Forum. Part 6. The scale of what's possible. Coastal erosion protection is only where this story begins. Think about foundation stabilization for buildings constructed on sandy or unstable soil. A process that can be carried out using portable equipment, powered by a small solar panel, and completed within hours, could transform how structures are built in regions where ground conditions are poor and conventional methods are prohibitively expensive.